feeling like I'm Akademiks. Can't ride away.
This whole David case took an interesting turn, people. Really interesting turn. So this whole David case, remember we went over the other night, and what happened is that David, or his people, no, not his people actually, the LAPD. I don't know what's going on with them and TMZ. Usually TMZ, I've told you, they pay for sources within the law enforcement that will leak them information to current and open investigations. That's why they always have they have an exclusive source, and look like they have reported some sources, but the sources seemingly are, at first I was reading it, I was like, it's kind of like conflicting. How was a body left in a car for like seemingly days or weeks in a hot car in LA, and when they found it, it was frozen? So I was like, this sounds odd. And then we hear is decapitated and this and third. Well, the LAPD came out and said TMZ's wrong. And I've never seen them do this before. But LAPD, TMZ, they came out to correct TMZ. And they basically was like, yo, hey, listen, TMZ is wrong about all of this shit. Right? And here we go.
Question.
Here we go.
In the death of Celeste Rivas Hernandez, TMZ now says a source inside the medical examiner's office is doubling down, claiming her body was partially frozen when it was discovered in the Tesla registered to singer David. Now, this is something LAPD publicly disputes. Harvey Levin, executive producer, founder of TMZ, joins us now live with the latest twists in this already very tense and tight-lipped investigation. Harvey, so many questions, beginning with this detail about was her body partially frozen or not? There is discrepancy, and why does this matter?
Well, I think that it's really important, actually. So we reported over the weekend that we were told the body was partially frozen when it was found. That's pretty remarkable because, remember, it was inside that car for days, and it was hot out when it was found. Remember, it was sitting in late August, early September. So it appeared that the body had been frozen somewhere and was thawing out. Now, the LAPD captain who is running this said, on the LAPD side, came out yesterday and said the body was not frozen. So
they're actually denying what TMZ is saying, and since I'm at here,
this
is kind of turned into like a thing about TMZ's credibility in a sense. Which, by the way, their credibility has always been tip-top shape. They're the first people who reported that Michael Jackson died and a lot of things. So yesterday, they actually came out directly, and they were kind of responding like directly to the LAPD, who basically came out and said, y'all are lying. Y'all not telling the truth. Y'all are lying. Right? So they came out and responded, and they responded in a video here.
We have a very well-connected source connected to
Speaker Music. Thank you for that donation.
The medical examiner, the LA County medical examiner, which currently has the body. And that source has doubled, tripled, quadrupled, and sextupled down, actually, now, saying that the body was indeed partially frozen when it was received by law enforcement. So that's kind of interesting, but the medical examiner is just telling a different story, or at least the sources we have, and we have sources in all camps in this, there's a conflict here.
We'd heard that there had been this conflict between LAPD and the medical examiner.
There's been tension for several years. But this is kind of interesting. One of the documents at the LA County Medical Examiner's office has an interesting statement. This has to do with trying to fingerprint Celeste's body. It says the decedent...
Okay. This is interesting because this is one of the first times, and I could tell TMZ feels like either their sources, is really being questioned, which they pay for sources, right? But their credibility is hanging in the weeds. And I've always said this, chat, a lot of time I report stuff and I'm getting it from it got to be a credible source, because I'm getting it from people involved. And I've always said, I protect my sources, right? I protect my sources. However, if you lie to me, I'm throwing you to the wolves. You're not going to feed me the lie. And after you feed me the lie, everybody says, oh, Ak never had a source or he made it up. I'm going to tell you who made it up and told me. Like, you get what I'm saying? But if you're telling the truth, I'll stick with you and I'll rock with you and I won't reveal. It looked like TMZ is kind of like revealing who the fuck is their source. They're basically saying their source is in the medical examiner's office. And by the way, I didn't know. I thought there was a funeral for this young woman. They're basically admitting that they still have the body.
Office has an at the LA several years. But this is kind of interesting. One of the documents at the LA County Medical Examiner's Office has an interesting statement. This has to do with trying to fingerprint Celeste's body. It says the decedent was not live scanned due to waterlogged fingers. Well, that's kind of interesting.
Right. Why would the fingers
be waterlogged?
So no one has seen the medical examiner report, but clearly they have a source to it. So their source is in the medical examiner's office, even though you could probably argue that the report has gone outside the medical examiner's office, and that's where they're reading it from. But you got to imagine it's probably close to the medical examiner's office. But they're saying they're reading a part from it that says they couldn't finger scan her like fingerprint her because her finger is waterlogged.
Waterlogged. Well,
what's waterlogged? I don't even want to Google it.
If the body had been frozen for quite some time and then is sitting in a bag in this Tesla out in the blazing hot summer sun, yeah, you would imagine that there's going to be some water in that bag.
So you've got to kind of like look at the big picture here. So we told you that even though there has not been a cause or manner of death determined by the medical examiner, and there may not be because of the state of the body, the LAPD is operating under the assumption that this is a homicide and that David is a suspect. And there is an accomplice, they believe, somebody who helped dismember the body. Now, there is a mysterious trip that becomes really important in this case, we're told, that David took to Santa Barbara in the spring of this year. In the middle of the night in a remote area of Santa Barbara County, spent several hours there. We are
frozen out.
Did they delete it? Because this don't
the
feel
back
like
and forth information. And by the way, last week, Active has ongoing investigation and the
okay. So this is what the LAPD says. This is the captain, I believe.
Integrity of the investigation.
We will reveal or attempt to reveal ongoing. Okay. I think they're reaming out. They're reaming out TMZ. Here we go.
Case. The timing of that, along with the wording of the news release from the medical examiner's office, leads me to believe a cause and manner of death have been determined in the case of Celeste Rivas Hernandez, and the ME's investigative and autopsy reports are completed. Is he right? Now, to couple that, something else I got to talk about. According to the LA Times, according to court documents that they reviewed, a detective has categorized this investigation as a, quote, investigation into murder. Now, that is very significant because the LAPD previously indicated that there might not be a crime beyond concealment of a body. So this was paperwork in support of not releasing the ME's findings, which I just mentioned. And you had LAPD Detective Joshua Byers, who said in a declaration that was filed that release of these autopsy findings could taint or jeopardize this apparent murder investigation. Quote, will reveal or tend to reveal the ongoing investigation and the integrity of the investigation, as well as the identity of witnesses and or informants who are cooperating with law enforcement and the content of the information they have provided, which could endanger the lives of witnesses and or compromise the investigation. And Los Angeles Superior Court Judge Craig Richmond not waiting for that decision by the medical examiner.
Cause of death with whatever information.
So the thought was that they're still waiting for toxicology reports, more information. It was listed as deferred, and a partially frozen body being discovered.
This is what the captain said. Celeste's body was not frozen, so that's going against what TMZ said. She was not decapitated. That goes against what TMZ said. The whole frozen thing doesn't even make sense. Her body was in a car for weeks. Even if she had been frozen solid when she was put in a car for 5 or more weeks in the trunk of her car in the sweltering heat in the middle of summer, it would not have resulted in a partially frozen body being discovered on September 8th. So that's the captain basically going against what TMZ says.
Was not frozen. She was not decapitated. The whole frozen thing doesn't even make sense. Her body was in the car for weeks. Even if she had been frozen solid when she was put in the car, okay, initiated by the Los Angeles Police Department.
Okay. Now, TMZ they realize their reputation's on the line, and they're putting out more info than they've ever put out. And they're like, we have an insider. Now, you know who this is? This is Tenny Garagos' father, Mark Garagos. Mark Garagos has had some infamous clients, including Chris Brown. But Tenny Garagos represented Diddy. Mark Garagos has a podcast with Harvey Levin called the Two Angry Men podcast or something like that. And he's really plugged into a lot of those circles where the Emmys and DAs would move around. And that's why I think, and also with law enforcement. So I think he has some source, and I think he's helping Harvey. But anyway, I had watched their podcast before. They were unwilling to tell any source, but the LAPD has called them out now. So now, this is not no more on the podcast. This is on TMZ Live. They bring Mark Garagos on to kind of like shoring up what TMZ is saying. I hope you guys are following me.
Tell you what I think. If you've been watching us meet every week or every other week and discuss this gives you quite a bit of context into everything we've seen. You said about a month or 2 months ago you've never seen the way they've clamped down on this from LAPD. Famously, you guys have had great sources there for years. We now know, based on the blast from the medical examiner, why that is, because the medical examiner is trying to, so people understand, the medical examiner is not an arm of the LAPD. The LAPD does have a lab. They do have a forensics division. That is not the medical examiner. The medical examiner is a standalone vertical area where they want to be professional. They want to do things in such a way that guys like me, the defense lawyer, don't get up there and say, you're only saying that because the detective came and he fed you A, B, C, D, or E, and led you to believe and basically programmed you to get to a point where you would come to a conclusion that'll fit with our investigation. This current medical examiner, instead of being pilloried by law enforcement, actually is doing what he should do. He's adhering to a scientific method, which is, I'm going to take in all the information and I'm going to come to a scientific conclusion, not the one that's preordained by law enforcement. So when he comes out and he says this should be transparent, he is absolutely right. And one of the reasons is that you're also getting, and Harvey, you've said this, so it didn't come to me, you've said that your sources saying you can't think logically. One of the problems here,
not that I can't think logically.
Right. That we should not look at the case. And the facts of the case when it all come out can't apply logic to all of it.
There's many times, Charles, welcome to the podcast, and the body has somehow, because of the elements, frozen, and you are now bringing that body back somewhere else or digging the body back up. I know it's ghoulish, but obviously when you're investigating these cases, whether you're on the defense, the prosecution, or the ME, you're taking a look at the evidence and what does the evidence suggest, and that to me is no other compelling reason that I can think of.
I'm trying to find the shocking details. That's what they titled it.
Or at least one. I'm going to tell you, based on doing this longer than Charles has been alive, that there is understand.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry. We're gonna, I don't want to bore some of y'all to death. Okay, so they bring on a guy who kind of is helping them with sources, and now they have a break-in, which is, there's a major update. Which, by the way, if this is not that there's a grand jury being convened, which means that they're going to probably arrest this kid for murder shortly.
And underlying it all is what I believe is a war between the LAPD and the LA County Medical Examiner.
Okay, so TMZ has taken themselves out of it. It was really LAPD versus them. But they're saying our source is in the ME's office, which is the medical examiner's office. And they've kind of backed out of it, and they're saying the war now is between the medical examiner office and LAPD. So let's hear.
So here's what happened. The LA Times got hold of a petition that the LAPD filed asking to block the medical examiner from releasing any information about the death of Celeste Rivas. This is highly unusual. And as a matter of fact, The LAPD tried this back in September, and the judge in that case said there's no basis for doing that, that the LAPD didn't make a case. Well, they went back again, apparently a few days ago, and they asked again, seal all the information that the medical examiner has, and that judge did it. And the medical examiner was pissed and came out with a statement saying it's highly unusual. They believe in transparency, obviously a problem. The LA Times has seen that petition. The petition itself is sealed. So you can't even see the LAPD applying to get the order. It's all sealed. The LA Times, they say they've seen the petition, and in it, it says that a grand jury was convened in mid-November, just a week or so ago, and it's an investigative grand jury where they can subpoena witnesses and help the LAPD get information. Because think about it, the LAPD calls somebody and says, we want to talk to you. They say no. But if the grand jury subpoenas them, they have to come and they have to testify. So that's why law enforcement uses these grand juries. So this is an investigative grand jury. It met for a couple of days. We don't know if it's still in force.
How did that just play? Wait, how did that shit just play? Oh, okay, my bad.
Looking at this, trying to get information, and a lot of people, when LAPD calls, says, we don't want to talk, but they have to if it's a grand jury. So this gets back to...
Sorry, Chad, I accidentally played that song. By the way, yo, Lil Baby, man, listen, I'll give you a discount, but if I A&R your album, nigga, you be the hottest you ever been, bro. You putting out the wrong songs, man. I think you got the music. You just not putting out the right songs, man. Because that song with Young Thug should have been out. That other shit you putting out, except that last song, the last one I rock with, but other shit you putting out is just wasting time and space, nigga. It's just wasting hard drive space, bro.
David. We told you that David, even though nothing is formal, the LAPD is viewing him as a suspect in a homicide. They believe it's a homicide, even though the medical examiner hasn't yet said that, and we're told they may never be able to because of the condition of her body. We also, you may know, reported a story over the weekend that we have been told by sources that her body was partially frozen. The captain of the LAPD came out and said that's not true. We went back to our source connected to the medical examiner.
And again, yo, people protect sources, but if you're giving lies or you're getting contested, you're gonna get outed. You gotta imagine, for TMZ to say their source is connected connected to the medical examiner, you know what's happening at that ME office in LA County's ME office. Anybody with access to that file is getting investigated. You're leaking proprietary information about a corpse that the family may not even know. It's integral to a murder investigation, and you're probably tipping off the suspect. So them even saying our source is in that office, everybody's like, yo, everybody's account's getting froze. Let's see if you've been emailing people. Let's see our phones. And the reason why I think TMZ even names the ME office is because they don't want to look like liars. They didn't make it up out of thin air, right? And the police captain coming out and saying, you're lying. They could have said, we're not lying. We heard it from the detective in the LAPD, but they didn't. So they outed the ME office.
True. We went back to our source connected to the medical examiner, and they tripled, quadrupled, sextupled down and said it was partially frozen. Interesting that her fingers were so waterlogged they couldn't get a fingerprint off of it. This is direct from the medical examiner's documents. It says that they couldn't get that fingerprint because of waterlogged fingers. So that is the current state of this case. To summarize, the LAPD is clearly in the throes of an investigation. They're using the grand jury to get witnesses, presumably, to talk that they otherwise could not get to speak to them. David, we're told, is a suspect. We're told there is a second suspect that has something to do with the dismemberment of Celeste's body. There is a huge conflict between the medical examiner and the LAPD. Lauren Conlin from LA Magazine would also like to chime in, but before she does, would you like to subscribe?
I want to
Wait, is this? Oh, shout out to Lauren.
echo a couple things that Harvey said here. First and foremost, I have said from the start, it seems like LAPD and the medical examiners.
Oh, we got to get back. Oh, we got to get. Yo, chat, should I link up back with Lauren? Me, Lauren, and Unc? Sean G? Yeah, I haven't seen Lauren in a minute. She glowing. Look at you, girl. Yo, what y'all think Lauren making for Thanksgiving? I forgot to ask her if she could throw down in the kitchen. I know she got kids. And she does have a husband. Calm it down.
Office are completely at odds here. And I spoke to a forensic death investigator the other day, Joseph Scott Morgan, about the possibility of Celeste's body being frozen at one point. Not being frozen upon discovery, but at one point.
Yes.
Now, what he said was a medical examiner would be able to tell based on doing tests with the tissue. So they
Yes. And by the way, I said this just off watching Dexter. If you freeze a body at some point, it doesn't matter if they're unfrozen. When you found them, they could tell that the body was frozen, and usually it's frozen post-mortem.
They would be able to see if the body had thawed, had unthawed through microscopic cellular tissue.
Yes.
I mean, his words, not mine. But when TMZ...
What happens is there's so much water in the body. When water freezes, it doesn't freeze in like a really cool, almost circular way, like how liquid could move. It freezes and it's almost like shards, and those things make the cells like on a oval, like misshaped way. And also when they thaw out, sometimes it bursts through. Put like this, just to give you easy chemistry. And by the way, I did graduate with a biomathematics degree. Not that it needed this for me to tell you this, but if you ever had a bottle of water and froze it and the water expands, exactly, right? So essentially, if you think about cells that are filled with liquid and tissue, and if those are frozen, you could see how the freezing of cells would expand sometimes even beyond the tissue, that even if it thawed out later, the tissues are irreparably damaged. Do you understand that? If I freeze this bottle of water and it's a regular bottle of water is filled to like this line right here where my index is, right? This is how it would be. Once you freeze it, it's going to be up here. And sometimes you might freeze it and it even comes out or the cap comes off. That's what happens to the body. The liquid inside your body all expand when it's frozen.
Z got this leak from a source close to the medical examiner's office. My understanding was that testing had been done. It had been done to the point that the LAPD deemed this a homicide or a murder investigation, although they haven't come right out and said this. This was reported by the LA Times based on the petition they obtained by the LAPD blocking the medical examiner from releasing the death records. They saw this information that they're treating this like a homicide. So again, in my opinion, that came from the medical examiner's findings that they don't want out there. They do not want people like us speculating what possibly could have happened to Celeste and who was involved, because they don't want to, I guess, hinder their investigation. Although, I mean, at this point, there's tons of speculation, but I do believe that the theory of her body being frozen at one point is correct based on that. Now, just Peggy.
Yeah, and I've said that from the get-go without knowing. I didn't think that the body was frozen at the time of discovery, but I think that the ME, which I said before, if everybody goes back without even this new detail, I said that they could figure out if the body was ever frozen. And that would make sense in them trying to determine the timeline of when she died, because if she died and trying to figure out, like, if someone dies and they drop dead right here and nobody touches that body for a certain time, there is a certain way of decomposition that could be figured out. And, you know, deaths have been going on for a long time. And when you look at medical examiner offices, they study the science of this. It would matter on what temperature it is, what environment it is in, what other agents or anti-agents or animals are around to maybe pick at the body or the carcass or whatever the case is. And they could figure out, oh, that body's been there for like 2 weeks. That body's been there for 2 months, right? Depending on all these other factors. When you freeze the body, you actually suspend that process. So in trying to figure out when this person died, you're going to think about, okay, how long was this person frozen? Okay, so how do you do that? And by the way, this is... Again, chat, I would have definitely became a scientist or a doctor if it was as cool as... You ever watch like House or like these other shows? It makes being a doctor and like these, you know, being like a nerd seems cool. It's not cool, okay? Or not, I don't mean cool. It's just not exciting. It's a bunch of lab work and a bunch of boring shit. But like, yeah, so now you got to figure out based on how frozen it was, the decomposition up to that point, then afterwards, the age of the deceased carcass, or I shouldn't be calling it carcass, the corpse. And I think that's what the ME's office did. They had the info on it, and I think the LAPD probably wanted to keep that secret as they were still trying to get info and probably trying to get these guys to confess, because it's probably hard because of the freezing of the body. It's hard to, you know, kind of get all the info they need. Granted, yes, I know we live in 2025. It's hard to commit any crime. But a lot of people got Ring cameras. Well, Ring cameras, for the most part, most people have Ring cameras. It goes back 6 months unless they're paying for some special plan. So if you have a death that's a year ago, it's most likely, if it's now being investigated now, it's not going to be able to be found on many cameras, right? A lot of records get rewritten over a year. So if, depending on how long the murder was, maybe that's why police are having a hard time with it. And maybe that's why they're trying to act like they don't know when it is, to try to almost like in a reverse way, try to get these guys. So the ME's office basically saying, now we're down to put the stuff out or leak stuff. And that's the big issue.
Backing off of this, on that petition to block the records from being released, the LA Times said they saw a grand jury number, which sort of got them thinking, okay, is a grand jury being convened? And yes, as Harvey said, it's an investigative grand jury. So these types of grand juries could take a really long time. I mean, we're talking months here. It's not going to be easy and it's not going to be fast. However, this is a step in the right direction. The investigative grand juries are used for complex cases where police believe that a crime has been committed, but they don't necessarily have all of the details. They don't have all of the witnesses. They don't have all of the evidence. And with the investigative grand jury, they're going to be able to recommend proper subpoenas. So I'll give you an example. Let's say there is video surveillance, and this is hypothetical, video surveillance of somebody moving that Tesla at the end of July. Now, let's say there are rumors, and I don't know if the rumors are true or not, but that this person who moved the Tesla is not in the country. Well, police don't have the ability to say, hey, get back to the US, we want to talk to you. They can't do that unless a subpoena comes from a grand jury. So this type of grand jury is very important to get more information to eventually make an arrest in the case. So I'm happy at this point. I mean, I think, again, that things are progressing, although they're progressing slowly. But the LAPD has made it very clear that they do not want any information out there. I mean, their hand was forced. They finally made their second statement on November 25th, where they said, oh, and this is actually really interesting. What they said was, and this is different from what they had originally told People magazine. I believe it was Captain Scott Williams who told People magazine, you know, there is no evidence that she was frozen upon discovery or that she ever was frozen in general. He added that in parentheses. I cited that. In the LAPD statement from November 25th, he said, or the LAPD said, excuse me, they said there is no evidence that she was frozen upon discovery on September 8th, 2025. That's much different than saying that she was never frozen at all, in my opinion. So they put this out in a statement. They also debunked the decapitation, but they also confirmed that the Santa Barbara trip did happen in spring of 2025. TMZ reported that, and that was a great piece of information. They reported that he was in Santa Barbara County very late at night for a few hours, and the LAPD said, yes, this happened, but we don't know if this necessarily has anything to do with the death of Celeste Rivas Hernandez or not. I mean, look, they're not going to tell us, of course. We already know that. So, yeah, their hand was forced. They had no choice but to make a statement. And I don't necessarily think that we're going to hear anything else from the police directly unless, again, their hand is forced by the media. So TMZ, keep up the good work. Come check out our investigation into this case over.
Oh, yeah, we got to bring Lauren Conlin on.